Welcome to all you storm watchers, storm chasers, and Leanierologists out there. Welcome to another edition of Tempest Talks, where we discuss lean philosophy, principles, and tools, and how they impact our personal and professional lives. Today, we will be discussing being a lean follower with my good friend, Michel Schmied. By way of introduction, Michel considers himself a Razorback from Arkansas who left as a toddler, grew up in Switzerland, and came to California after college. He was lucky to learn French, German, and English, all by immersion. It's extremely impressive, by the way. He joined Roar in 1989 for 7 years, then 9 years at HP, and back to Goodrich Aerostructures, formerly Roar, in 2005. He retired in 2020, so pretty recently. Southern California is the climate that kept him here. He has 3 grown children, 2 of which work at Collins Aerospace, formerly Goodrich Aerostructures and formerly Roar, one in engineering and the other in aftermarket. The youngest child is in New York in the software business. His hobbies are cycling, skiing, boating, and flying. Anything basically that's outdoors. Michel and I met at Aerostructures, and we would often receive each other's emails because our initials are very, very similar. I don't know if you'll remember this, Michel, but I'll never forget several Kaizen events where people would get us mixed up, especially with actions. They'd be like, oh yeah, that's MS. Which MS? In one such event, we also had Sam Walling on the event, and we used to write our initials at the very top on the lid of our water bottles. And so we did that. We put MS, and Sam Walling put SW. And I remember a couple hours go by, we set our water bottles down, pick them up, and Sam said, that's mine. It is? Well, SW upside down is MS. So after that point in time, I started bringing my own water bottle. I don't know if you remember that at all, but
oh yeah, there was actually another MS, Michelle Stanley, in the same group. Yeah,
it's true. Oh my gosh, it's funny. It would happen to us all the time, and we'd use our middle initials too to try to solve some of that problem also. But
or I was Michelle 1L because how I spell it. Short.
That's right, Michelle 1L, Michelle 2L. That's right. Michelle Stanley did not appreciate big and little Michelle either. She's a very tall woman, extremely tall woman. But we had to change that as well. But it's fabulous seeing you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So today we're, did I miss anything, by the way?
No, I think that's a good roundup.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about being a lean follower. So when I say that, what does that actually mean to you, Michel?
So to me, a lean follower is one that, following us in the execution of standard work. The closer one follows, the less waste there will be. So that's how I see a lean follower, one that really sticks to the plan and executes.
Yeah, I like that because it's like you've bought into the methodology or the theory behind it, and you're following because it's the right thing to do, not necessarily because you were voluntold. Is that a safe way to say it?
I think that's one way to do it, which is of course also fraught with danger because if you just do what you're told, and at some point you lose the opportunity. Hey, there's maybe another way, there's maybe a better way. But I think the point of just following and executing is thinking of a manufacturing environment where you have to do something repeatedly, and it of course it requires that there is a lean program in place for
Yes.
this to be
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Both of us have worked in situations where a lean journey or culture is well established, and then others that are not. I know both of us spent lots of times in suppliers that were at the very beginning stages of their journey, and so they didn't really have a whole lot of followers in those processes, for sure. The culture is probably the most important part. At least that's what I emphasize. Would you agree?
No doubt. I mean, and that's maybe where just my background, my upbringing, and culture in many different ways to look at it. I mean, it's huge, and I was lucky enough to be exposed to different cultures, different countries, different languages, and then and being exposed to different companies, Rohr, HP, Goodrich, and then later UTC, Collins. Each one had its own culture, if you will, and really that drives the company. And the one thing I learned, especially at HP, company culture is incredibly valuable, and it can be destroyed and go out the window in just like a poof. I mean, just someone who comes in and thinks that no, we're going to do it differently, and changes the tone and the culture, and it goes out the window. And no finance, no CFO, no finance person can ever say, what is the value of the company culture? It's not on the books, it's nowhere, but it's incredibly, incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that before, but you're absolutely right. It's the company culture really is what drives the performance of the business. For many years, I would say decades, most companies didn't understand that. And so a lot of them epically failed in the 80s because they could not fix the culture that had been ingrained.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, that's really an interesting thought process. I hadn't thought about that. That it's really difficult to put a number on culture for sure. But we know that there's a difference. So, is there a difference in lean following and lean leading?
Yeah, definitely. If we're talking about a trained lean follower versus a completely untrained employee, a well-trained lean follower that will understand why things are done a certain way and can communicate in a common language that makes sense to other followers, to other, and also to other people across the organization who may not be, at the same level, and which is key to recognizing something needs to be changed. Whereas a lean lead, or what was the question? The lean follower versus a general? Yeah, no, I think that's what covered it. I had another thought there, but that's the main difference.
So, do you think a lean leader would be more effective than a normal leader, or is there a difference between a good leader and a lean leader? I guess.
I think it goes, along the same line that it's a lean leader, a lean follower versus a regular leader, not lean trained. It's all about the common language, the common culture, the common beliefs. I mean, it's not unlike, across the world, you have different countries. Well, each one has a different language, and yeah, if you're not speaking the same language, you're out of luck. So that's the same inside a company with a lean follower or leader versus non-lean. They just don't speak the same language, don't have the same views of things, and that really does it.
Yeah, I like that you bring in a common language. A lot of folks forget that as part of their culture as well. That they forget that how they communicate, the methodology also plays an impact in I like that you bring that up. Well, that's why you learned 3 languages.
I never realized I did, because I was a kid, and I learned later that if I tried to learn Spanish, from books, and
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't do it. I was just very poor at it. It was hard because I never had that experience before.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, because they're Romance languages, so I would think it would be easier. But if you're right, if you learn it as a kid, it's a lot easier to pick up language as a child than it is as an adult, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. But to that point, one of the things that I noticed in all of my work travels and personal travels, one of the most impressive things, I was in Amsterdam, and we had just come out of the Anne Frank home into the museum part, and then into the gift shop, because all museums in Europe dump you out into a gift shop. All of them do. But what was most impressive to me was the cashier at that particular gift shop. People from all around the world, of course, know who Anne Frank is and know what she went through and what her family went through. And so there are people from all over the world in this gift shop. And that cashier had to have known 9 languages. It was so impressive. So a tourist from Japan would walk through. She would speak fluent Japanese to them, then French, then Spanish, then Dutch, then German. It was so impressive. I just sat there and watched her for close to half an hour, thinking, my goodness, how amazing that is that she can communicate. And I remember me traveling for work and feeling so frustrated, especially in Malaysia, where I could not communicate in Malay. And it irritated me because I wanted to express what I was thinking, but we had to translate it. Luckily in Malaysia, they speak fluent English as well, but still, it's not in the common language. So it was frustrating to me for that. I don't know if you've experienced the same.
It can, and in defense of especially this country, they you always hear that they're so impressed, and they feel somehow lesser because they don't speak as many languages as, let's say, Europeans or Asians. And but for whatever reason, English has come to dominate the world, and that doesn't help, because then you really don't have to. You can travel the world on English alone. So yeah, you have you have no incentive to learn something else. And in business especially, business has it's done in English around the world.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I remember, of course, some of the suppliers that we worked with. All of them would speak to us, especially in aerospace, speak to us in English. Is there a difference in behavior of lean followers versus a general employee that knows nothing about lean?
Yes, there's no doubt. The trained and the lean follower that knows the system. I think it was one episode where I realized what that really meant, and that was we had a big supplier in Italy, Aermacchi, and
yes.
and they were, how should I say, they were just at another level of lean. They knew what it was, but it was just a whole different culture, if you will. Mm-hmm. And when they were in the same business as we are, they were making large composite structures. They were competent. They had design. They had manufacturing, everything. And when we showed them Riverside, where we were doing bond assemblies, at first they were kind of quiet, and it took a little while to kind of gauge, what are they thinking? Are they thinking we don't know what we are doing,
Mm.
or the other way around? And it wasn't really that. They knew everything. They knew the technology, the tools, how to do things. What they finally said something, and that struck. They said, what's impressive here in Riverside is the serenity of the workers.
Oh.
And it's like, took a
Huh.
little moment to sink in, and said, what did they mean? And I think what they saw was that, Riverside, which is, lean, and they really work it. What they saw was how calm things are, and how workers who they know their stuff, they have a system, they follow it. There was no rush. There was this serenity because everything flowed. And and as we know, at a fairly good clip, they were performing very well. That
Very
impressed
well.
the Italians, that, and I
Huh.
think that's the best way of saying, if you have a lean organization that works lean versus one that doesn't, is the one that doesn't is, there's every once in a while chaos. People are hurrying up, waiting, it's and that's the serenity comes from lean and having it really down pat.
Huh. Yeah, it's true. There is peace when there's structure. I talked about this a few Tempest Talks ago, where when we were talking about 5S, and I was thinking, it's really true that we as human beings, we actually crave structure. We don't crave chaos, because structure, to your point, brings peace and calm and serenity, because we know what is coming. We know what to expect. When there's chaos and there's no structure, we have no idea what's going to happen. We suffer the consequences of that in chaos. And so, to your point, we do firefighting, and we put tiger teams together to solve the problem. But in a lean structure, you're right. There's less of that panic that happens. And so it's almost easier to manage. To be a leader in a lean organization, it's a lot easier to manage because you know what to expect, versus the ones that are not in a lean structure or have a good business system, if you will. It's chaos. It's complete chaos. Yeah, I've worked for several organizations that were absolute chaos. And you never knew one day to the next for some people, if they were going to have a job the next day. They had no idea. For others, it was, are we going to meet customer demand? All of that is very concerning, especially for employees. So it's almost easier to be a follower because you see the benefits from it.
Yep, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Do you see a lean influence in everything that you do? Have you brought it home?
Yeah, I mean, let's say in many things, before lean was introduced at Roar in those days, I don't know where I started. I had a habit of writing checklists for certain things that had to be done in a sequence, just because I found, if you fall out of sequence, something doesn't work, and I got tired of redoing things. So I said, how about I make just a list of things? And maybe it's also something I learned when I learned to fly. It's everything goes by checklist. So I took that with me, and I have some checklists that I use to this day, for things how to do things in Excel. Things you don't do often, but every
Yeah.
once in a while you need to change, a macro or something, that's a little deep. But you don't, if you do that, once every 6 months or a year. You don't use it a lot. If you
Yeah.
have to learn it every time, it takes a long time. And so I know where they are, and it's like, oh, I need to change this formula or this macro or whatever. I wrote it down. Go back to that, and then it's just like boom, 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 and it's done.
Oh, that's awesome. I need a copy of that. I can't tell you how many times I've had to YouTube stuff 3 or 4 times because I haven't written it down.
Well, yeah. Well, YouTube is actually a fantastic tool. It is like a huge checklist, and there's some, not all YouTubes are good, but there's some that are exactly in that spirit where it's like, okay, this is how you go through step by step, and it's amazing how it helps.
Yeah, for sure. It's wow, yeah. Um, yeah, I think I do the same thing. There's certain things that, I've taken from my workspace and brought home just because it's easier. So planning certain things is very helpful. So planning for a trip. I have a kit essentially when I when I leave on a trip. All of my toiletries, I have a kit. So all I have to do is grab it and put it in my suitcase, and I know I have everything. Um, those are kind of some of the habits that I've done. And thought about uh some of those things, but Excel for sure. Oh man, I could use that. uh yeah. How about your family? Have they noticed you bring some of these things home?
Yeah, up to a certain point. I never really pushed it on them, and never pushed it too far. But at one time, I did write some standard work for handling our boat. The family
Oh
boat that
yeah.
we go and play with, and and I was going on a long trip, and then if they have to move the boat and I'm not here, they haven't. I need to do so. My wife asked for, okay, make me a list, because she knew that I was working off list. So I did it and
Nice.
some on it. And then I took the whole family down to the boat and had a draft and let them actually do everything per that list.
Nice.
And the funny thing, the feedback I got was about font size, uh, color, the picture, the size of the thing, but the sequence of things, how they went, no problem. So yeah, I did rewrite it to make it look to their liking, but yeah, it just case in point, if you write things down and you have a sequence, it's anybody can really do whatever the task is.
Oh my gosh, I love it. They were nitpicking the way that it looked.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Of course, that never happened at work, did it? No.
No, never. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Sometimes I would think that I was like, proficient in Adobe or proficient in PowerPoint, because oh God, that one weekend where we were putting together charts and it had to be, I still remember 210 red, 240 blue, and 154 green. Those were the colors. We were not allowed to deviate from those colors. I still have it ingrained in my brain. But I mean, there's a reason for it. Especially when I walk into other companies. One of my clients that I was at, they put together this beautiful PowerPoint presentation to give me background for their business. And their color scheme is red, gray, and white, and a little bit of black, but that's their color scheme. So all of their bar charts are red, gray, black, and white. And I told them, I'm really sorry, but this is jarring to me because red means something totally different to me than a theme or a color scheme. So red to me is, it requires action. So your entire presentation is red. So to me, it's like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of problems here we've got to fix, which wasn't necessarily the case. But I realized it was my lean, growing up that taught me that. Because it's certain colors you just stay away from because they have a meaning for that. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's anywhere in a car, the emergency flash, it's a red button. In an airplane, there's a few red buttons. On a boat, there is a red button for, stopping, emergency stop. So yeah, it's actually on Zoom, upper right is a red button. It says leave. So yeah, so
please don't leave yet.
Red is, yeah, exactly. I can see where that is a problem on that presentation. That's all in red. It's like, okay, red is, we're somehow schooled or trained to hit that red if something goes awry. And,
yes. It's really funny how that how we're trained to do that. So it was that presentation was really jarring to me. And I had to ask a couple people, is this, their theme, or are they trying to communicate that life is really, really bad? So the following time that I had a conversation with them, I told them that. And I was like, you might want to change, how you present yourself, because even though it's a theme, I get it, those colors mean something to people. So you might want to change that.
Could be interesting, but a presentation of within the Red Sox organization looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the Chiefs, yeah. And the Chiefs and the there's a lot of red teams now that I think about it. There's a lot of red and a lot of blue. Of course, I bleed blue. I'm a BYU Cougar at heart. I am not a Utah Ute. So even though I went to both schools, but very interesting how color means what it means for sure. Oh my goodness. So do you think, sorry, jumping right back into it, do you think that lean should be ingrained in the culture of the organization? Or is lean thinking a driving force for culture? Is it necessary?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no way around it. And having said that, I made some interesting experiences with different organizations, more specifically different suppliers across the world in different languages, different cultures. And the one thing that I never forgot was we were going to a great supplier in Japan, Nikiso, and to do a lean audit, because that's what we do. What our organization was tasked to do. So coming from a U.S. manufacturing environment, and having lean ingrained, and we really believed in everything we were doing, and we knew what we were doing, and so on. So we go in and start the audit, and I realized we had a completely different perspective on right sizing. Our team. I mean, we were the unit of measure that we were going by was feet and inches, and we were taking that very seriously. When I came to Japan, or when we came to Japan and walked into that shop, we went, oh my God, they're down to millimeters, centimeters. I mean, they were working. The workspace was so tight that there was no more right sizing to be done, none whatsoever. I've never seen anything as tight as that. And another example in Austria. So they had not jumped into the Toyota production system in a way like we did, but they had a huge influence from European automotive, German automotive, and so on. And they have, and I had learned that when I was in college over there. They have this what they call German word Arbeitsvorbereitung, which is it translates into pre-work for the assembly.
Okay.
The closest thing that it comes to what we do is maybe kitting, but
Okay.
at a different level, completely different level.
Oh.
So kitting to us is more, all right, it's a kit and it's all packaged and everything is there. The shadow boards do that. Well, their kitting is the other level. The next level is it's presented so that the assembly worker can grab things, and the sequence is already predetermined, and what's up, what's down, everything. So it's literally grab and snap, right? And
Wow.
they were extremely efficient at that. So we believe that if we kit, we touch things twice. That's not a good thing.
Right.
Well, the way they were doing there was well above and beyond that. So engraining lean, there's not one way to do it. That's what I learned from that.
Yeah.
And many different ways to do it. And but yeah, it's you do all that, and it's definitely a motivator for the workers, because like in Riverside, that serenity, it's when you have that ingrained, things become calmer and smoother and better.
Yeah. I like that you said there's not one right way to do it. You're absolutely right. I'm working with another client where they're wanting to take best practices from all of their different value streams. And the only way to get the value streams to buy into this concept of best practice and best practice sharing was to allow them to be somewhat autonomous. So in other words, they weren't told step by step, this is how you need to perform a Kaizen event, for instance. You use the right tool for the right situation. It's not prescribed. You have to have a fishbone diagram. You have to have 5 whys performed, or it's not considered a Kaizen event. So I've learned there's a lot of opportunity for creativity within specific boundaries within the lean thought process as well. And it made me think of, I'm not a parent, but I'm assuming that when you're raising kids, you give them boundaries so that they don't hurt themselves or hurt someone else, right? But within those boundaries, there's a lot of opportunity for them to grow and develop in the way that makes sense to them. So, like, you didn't tell your children, go into aerospace because it's the only way to go. I'm sure they ended up choosing that on their own.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's a lot of people, badmouth probably might be the term to use, badmouth lean for not allowing creativity, but it's actually the opposite in my mind. It gives opportunity.
Yes, and that brings up another good example, and something we at times we missed. So when we really built up Mexicali and went there, event after event, and
so many
really made the difference. The one thing that happened, we kept on doing the lean events the same way for just a little bit too long, because at the very first it was hard, and we had to help with 5S and right sizing and point of views. And well, we kept doing that. And we kept making, every time we would build more point of views devices, out of PVC and the preform tubes and whatnot. All of a sudden is like, what we had done 6 months prior, we were trashing it and building another one.
And it's expensive.
And later we would do another one. And until we realized, what? The organization there, they didn't get that. And they had, luckily, because they had, started to be trained and the lean had been ingrained, they were looking at us, we don't know what we're doing. And we realized, they have their own ideas now, because they have this enough. And we had to learn to, let them do their own. And all of a sudden they took off and started to build their own point of views, their own tooling and help, to shop helps and all that. So lean and how you deploy lean needs to change with time. As you progress, you really need, you can't, do the cookie cutter lean event, time, the same way every time. You really have to evolve it.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it's so true. Especially because the organization is learning. And they've got to be allowed to learn. Some of the places where lean failed in places that I visited and or worked for, I won't name names, but when there was an overpowering entity that came in and tried to control how we deployed lean, we got worse. We didn't get better. It's almost like us lean professionals, Leanierologists, however you want to call us, we should be thinking in terms of we're working ourselves out of a job versus I'm going to make myself an entity that is going to be here until the end of time. Right? Because every employee should end up becoming really good problem solvers, and they can solve their own problems. They can put together a Kaizen event scope sheet because they know what they're doing. To your point, they know what they're doing. We should let them do what they need to do. And the organization will tell you that. So did you see, it sounds like you saw that in Mexicali, that the organization really did tell you, hey, let us do our own thing. But did you see that in suppliers as well?
Yes, I mean, there were some that, again, with their own flavor of it. But yeah, you saw progress. Maybe not how we would have done it, but that really doesn't matter. As long as there is progress, that's all goodness.
Yeah, we all can benefit from that. Yeah, that's good. So it is kind of a motivator if it's deployed well, then, would you say? Lean is a motivator.
Oh, yes, no question about it, because things get better, get easier. Again, it's that serenity that sinks in because, things are smooth.
Yeah. Well, and then do you think all leaders should become lean teachers or senseis?
I think that depends on individuals. Definitely, there's always the person who likes just to do things, who is content to work in a manufacturing environment and build things, and person who have other ambitions and want to grow and become a leader, become a teacher, things like that. So yeah, I think it depends on the person, but a good lean follower that knows how things are done and likes manufacturing is probably best left at that, because that's what that person likes to do. And those who want to progress and become leaders and influence, well, they find usually their path to that anyway. So again, it depends on the person.
I like that you said that. It takes me back to a conversation I had with my husband. He's a mechanical design engineer. And I remember having a long conversation with him about his personal development. And I actually said to him, do you want to lead people, or do you want to be an individual contributor and keep designing? What brings you most joy? Is it designing or is it leading people? And he said, if I'm truly honest, I am British and I like to be alone. And and I prefer to lean into that, if you will. And I don't want to give up designing. It's my passion. And I said, okay, then you need to be looking for something like a chief engineering's office where you're in control of the, of the actual design and how the design is released, versus focusing on leading people and developing engineers, of course, but you're not wanting to run operation floors. You're just not wanting to do that. And that's fine. That's great that you know that. And he's like, yeah, that's good. So he's now doing that. He's leading engineers on how to become better designers, and he absolutely loves it, which is great. So to each their own. Whereas me, I'm like, I love leading people, but I also love leading projects as well. So for me, my development path was very different. I enjoyed being a lean follower, but I also wanted to lead the charge for lean as well. So I went more, I want to learn how to be a sensei from good senseis, kind of approach is how I went. Yeah, to each their own, right?
Yeah.
To each their own. So I like that you said not everybody should lead, because that's true. So in those cases, some folks may be, assigned as leaders, but they may not be the best lean guides. Do you think their direct staff should then do it? Or do you think they should bring somebody else in to train that and coach that? What do you think would work best?
So I think the experience at Roar and then later at a little bit at HP, but in different ways, and then at Goodrich, I think senseis can be incredibly valuable. But it's got to be in the right scope, and it's like any consultant. You bring him in for a reason, and maybe it's for a change or to get a look from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as company in Roar, as Roar progressed, through lean, eventually we became our own or we had within the company, we had our own sensei, so you don't need to bring them out. And that's really the goal of a sensei, to get a company on that path and become self-sufficient.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think it was Martin Lodge that actually said there came a time where we said, thank you for everything you've taught us, but we know more. And we respectfully parted ways with our sensei at that point, which is wise. That's what we should be doing. Being a consultant, I know my role. If the company no longer needs me, I wish them well. They're doing what they need to do and what they feel is best for the business. It's not my place to judge them or to force my way in to be a permanent entity at their business. If I'm fighting for that, I'm not a good fit for the company. I'm sure we've seen that as well in a few locations.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, I think we've seen that. Do you think all employees, though, have the ability to be lean followers?
Yes, definitely. And it's hard to say, but those who don't want to go that way, well, maybe they need another role or another job or another company. That's but whether I don't think lean is the trigger for that. It's in any job.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it even happens among lean people too. So the one lean focal person may disagree with the direction that the company is going with lean. They may not like it, and so they may choose, you know what, we're not the right fit for this role anymore. I need to find another company that meets my need. I know I've been searching for the culture that we had at Goodrich. Ever since I left Goodrich, I was searching for that culture because it was so unique. Everybody knew their role, they knew that they could contribute and that their contribution was worthwhile. I absolutely loved the culture there. And so we may find that thinking that, there's greener pastures elsewhere. And we jump ship and then realize actually life was pretty good over there. Maybe I should go back. Or we try to develop it in our own businesses as well, and trying to coach what we liked also. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, I mean it's in many different ways. Because I jumped from Rohr to HP back to Goodrich, the one thing I realize is that there's always greener pasture elsewhere, right? But
Yeah.
I think what is really valuable is the experiences you make and the learnings and things I learned at Rohr, things I learned at HP, and things I took with me, things I knew I'm not going to do this again ever. So it's
Yeah.
as much as what you learn, but also what you learn not to do.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's definitely that. So what change is probably a tough sell for any leader.
Yes.
And when I think back to the Rohr days, where Rohr was at that time, basically facing bankruptcy.
Right.
So selling change in an environment like that was a matter of survival, and most people pulled the wagon and some jumped off. So that was a really neat experience to see it that way. And then later, when I went to HP was probably at the opposite end. HP was incredibly successful, economically awash in, money and funds. I mean, they were living large. And what I saw coming there was that, they have too much success and they won't know when things start to go bad or the economy starting. Sure enough, the dot-com crisis, 90 late 90s,
Yeah.
hit them, because of what I'd seen at Rohr. I was better able to handle that and handle, let's call it a downturn or whatever. And the people that had been there with all this success for too long didn't know how to. So it's what you learn along the way and what you carry with you and what you know not to do again. That's the value.
Yeah, that's what I like about lean, because it really is lessons learned. So what do we do to prevent that from happening again? And what do we learn from this situation so that we can try to lessen the impact of it happening again, or to eliminate the issue at all? I think that's one of the reasons why it resonated so well with me, because it is really about improvement of the business, yes, and efficiencies, yes, but it's also about improvement of the individual and the employee as well. I think that's probably why I bring it home and use some of the things I learned at home, because it really did, the culture especially really did make me a better person. It made me less judgmental, made me try better. It doesn't always work. You can ask Adrian that, but try to not jump to negative assumptions, and to look objectively at a situation and try to fix it, if you will. I really appreciated that from what I learned from our lean background. Do you think that if an individual doesn't have a position of authority, like a leadership, actual formal role, how can they influence the culture and culture change?
Many different ways, but I think the one example I'm going to bring up, and I don't know if you ever connected with Perry Wallace.
Yes.
So
Great
to
guy.
me, that was, I don't know if you talked about that or if he talked about that, but what he did, he was basically sent to France to a company that wasn't even our supplier, was the supplier to a supplier, and they were in absolute, shambles. They had hundreds of truss reverser structures laying around, with defects. It was just a nightmare. And, one person before him just didn't succeed, and they sent Perry, and doesn't speak French. They speak broken English. And he told me how it started. They just gave him an office in the corner of the plant and kind of ignored him. And he just looked outside, his office window, and saw things and asked for a broom.
Oh,
and then he went, he was polite and asked, "Hey, can I help you here?" So he started to basically started with the first S in 5S, started to clean, to sweep, to sort things out, and just started from the back of the shop. And that wasn't his job. That wasn't what he was sent for. But he knew what he was doing. And the way he described it, first, what happened is, the shop workers were starting to notice and started to figure that, oh, well, yeah, actually, this is a good way. Now we can kind of see things and, get rid of stuff that shouldn't be there, and get some things organized and lined up. And he started to sort out, the different truss reverser panels and whatnot. And that helped the people on the floor. And he kept using his broom, cleaning things up. And then it took a while, but then leadership started to notice, because things were starting to move again. So that, to me, anyone, it starts with a broom. It's that simple. And I always say, try it at home. It works.
Totally does.
Try it in the garage.
I love it. It's true, because if you think about it, it started with the broom with our CEO too. He pushed a broom as part of one of the Kaizen events as well.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. I'm gonna have to ask Perry about it and see what it was like. Like, well, I'm gonna do something. Can I please have a broom?
Yeah.
instead of shoving me in a corner. But he had to do something, right? Couldn't
Exactly.
just sit in the back office and say, well, they're not doing anything. He took action,
Mhm.
which is also part of lean. You've got to be willing to take action, and it may be uncomfortable and it may be
Yep.
below your pay grade, but you've got to be willing to do it. That's awesome. I like it. Do you have any advice for leadership trying to promote change in their organizations and just maybe aren't getting the buy-in? Do you tell them grab a broom?
I mean, it could be in some situation. It could be just that. Uh, yeah, I think it's all about making a convincing case for change. Again, that's change is always a tough sell, and it
Yeah,
all
for
depends
sure.
on the situation of the company, the economic situation, the market. You can be, facing bankruptcy, and then it's a whole different uh, need for action, or you
Mhm.
can be incredibly successful. And if you don't, so at HP there was a case where they were so successful they couldn't meet the market demand. um, so they had to really, double and quadruple output in a
Mhm.
very short time, or lose the market share to the competition.
Wow.
So totally different starting positions, and I think
Mm.
that's why leaders, are on a high pay grade. They need to really good leader figures out, in what situation how to make that sell for change.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are the leaders of that change. They really are the ones that are driving that initiative, if you will. Um, so what if leaders disagree with each other? How should they handle that?
That never happens.
Exactly. We're perfect all the time.
Yeah. No, there will always be, and disagreement is just that's an opportunity,
Yeah.
because there's different views of things, which means, all right, then there's still possibility of changing something.
Mhm.
Um, then it's, it comes down to personalities and how the company culture is. I remember before leaving Roar, going up to McDonnell Douglas, and it was brutal, being up there, because that company culture had degraded to be so bad. They were screaming and yelling
Oh,
at anybody, at their supplier, at their workers, and
awful.
I remember saying, they're not going to survive. There's no way. And lo and behold, Boeing bottom, and then tragically, that same leadership that had created this culture,
They carried
ended
over.
up on top of Boeing, and the rest is history. Why, Boeing lost its way, and that's where it came from.
Oh,
The wrong
that's so sad.
culture, the wrong leaders. Unfortunately, hopefully they'll turn around.
Yeah, I hope so, because the future of American aviation depends on it, really.
Yeah,
Because if you think about it, the two big ones are Boeing and Airbus, and Boeing's got to get it together in order to survive. That's awful. Yeah, I have lots of experience in not so healthy company cultures and paranoia. When paranoia is rampant at the top, it permeates through the culture faster than positive reinforcement. And it's really sad that it happens that way, that negativity spreads faster than good behavior, but it is what happens, unfortunately. um, yeah. Is there anyone in your life that has helped shape you as a leader? Um, and or motivated you to become the individual that you are today?
So yeah, in many different ways. I think it's again, when you move through a career and you move, to different companies, you pick up, you remember, and maybe going back to school, you remember the teachers that really made a difference.
Yeah.
Later in working in a company, or creating a company, you remember those people who really made a difference. So yeah, I think looking back, there's no doubt that in the Roar days, when Bob Pentland was around, he was really a driving force, and
Yeah.
he was, at some point we said, yeah, thank you very much, made a big difference, but now we know more.
Yeah.
He's definitely one that I learned a lot from in the early days, of how to initiate change and move things um, when you're in a desperate position. Later on, there were others. I think Jeff Fraley was incredible. Attending lean events with him, and just how he led those. Learned a lot from that. Martin Lodge, and then later at HP, there were other leaders. As important, learning from leaders how not to do things. So that
Yes.
in there.
Yes.
So yeah, and then we saw it again, Goodrich,
Yeah.
and then UTC, that was tough, and then Collins was better, and now I hear Raytheon, and it's really going forward. So yeah, you remember the teachers and the managers you worked for that taught you something.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully we take from them the good more than the bad, but there are definitely those that stick out in my mind where I'm never doing that ever. That is not the way. I definitely have those experiences too. Well, did we miss anything about being a lean follower? Is there anything you want to add?
So I think we covered it all. I think it starts with a broom is always a great thing. I will always remember, and
Love it.
and all the things we talked about. I mean, it's doing things better, cheaper, faster. That's really what we're after.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. It starts with a broom. Maybe that should be the title of a book that we write. It starts with a broom.
Yeah.
I like it. And or a podcast.
Yeah.
It starts with a broom. I like it. That's really good. Well, thank you so much, Michel. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and to speak with my viewers, and to share some of your insights on leadership and lean, and I'm just so grateful for your influence in my career as well. I'll never forget my first few weeks working at Goodrich and receiving those first couple emails where I'm like, what? I'm not Michel Schmied. Who's Michel Schmied? And meeting you and your graciousness and your patience really taught me a lot as a young engineer, and I really appreciate your influence. I never officially worked for you, but I feel like I learned a lot from you as an influential leader in my career. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and that's good to hear.
Made a difference for me, for sure. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have you come back and speak with us again if you're willing. And we'll see you on the flip side.
Good.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks.